Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. AMSOIL and I are working together to make sure that you have the tools you need, regardless of if you are a supercross racer, a desert UTV racer, a backcountry snowmobiler, a drifter, ATV, drag racer. Does not matter. We want to make sure you have the tools you need to learn how to better market yourself and drive more value for your sponsors. We are your guides to motorsport sponsorship. And I actually want to take a minute to tell you a pretty cool story about AMSOIL. So back in the 1960s, there was a jet fighter. His name was Al Amutizio. And he asked a very simple question. Why don't we use synthetic oil in our car engines? So at that point, synthetics were the only lubricants that were capable of protecting jet engines against extreme heat and stress of supersonic flight. But they were not used in car engines for whatever reason. So he decided to start a company in Superior, Wisconsin, and called AMSOIL. Now, following years of research, he introduced the world's first synthetic motor oil for automobiles. This happened in 1972. Now, today, synthetics are absolutely everywhere, but AMSOIL still leads the industry. And why is that? Because they haven't stopped innovating. They test and retest their products in the world's toughest vehicles and equipment. In the field, on the track, in the lab, AMSOIL products run the gauntlet before they ever reach your garage. And I can definitely appreciate this. That's the reason why I've run AMSOIL products. Is just it is amazing the amount of research that they put in and actually publish about their products. But all of this started with a fighter pilot from Wisconsin. Such a cool story. So I hope that inspires you to make the switch to AMSOIL today. That way you can help your vehicles last longer, run better. Go to amsoil.com/rider to find out more. Now, our featured guest today is off-road racer and marketing mage Lindsay Geiser of Geiser Performance. And as a quick reminder, our last episode actually featured the original thumper himself, Doug Henry, who is an absolute Supercross and X Games legend. Now, I really want to get your feedback, and the best way to do that is head over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. The reason why that is so important is it drives more visibility to the show, which means we can continue to bring on amazing guests. So head over there and do that. If you ever have questions on how to do it, let me know. And whatever podcast player you use, go ahead and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. So next up, we actually have another marketing, in this case, a wizard, just so you guys know. Wizard is male and mage is female, so that's why I use those just now. Brandon Tedizzle Cox. So he is coming on next. Really excited to get that episode out there. Now, this episode is also sponsored by 5 other awesome companies. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Bold Racing and Suspension, the family race team and custom suspension experts. Armor Coat, they simplify your cleaning process. And Crash Addict Industries, they create human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to give a shout out to some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK, Studboy Traction, GSP XTV Axles, and One Stop Performance. Now, the structure of this show is set up like a race. We will begin with the qualifier, which is basic intro. In Heat 1, we'll dive into Lindsay's background. In Heat 2, we'll discuss sponsorship, tactics, and strategies. In the main event, we'll discuss mindset, and we'll end at the finish line. That's where we're going to get some closing comments and contact information for Lindsay. Without further ado, let's hop in. So, Lindsay, why don't you fill in the gaps from that intro and tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, I am a Geiser. I grew up racing with my dad's footsteps. He started the Geiser shop with his brother when the year I was born. So, I've literally been going to the races since week one. So grew up in off-road racing, going to those races. When I was 12, I got my first race. I got a trophy cart, so I started racing when I was 12, and then moved up, kept racing short course for a few years, and then recently I went to college. I was there for 3 years, got done early, and now I'm back in the game, but now we're doing more desert stuff. So I'm racing a 6100 in the off-road racing. And I'm also a marketing manager for my cousin Sean Geiser. so still in the family. But we do UTV builds, so we're building Can-Ams and Razors at Geiser Performance. So I've got my foot in a little bit of everything off-road wise.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it all.
And I love the way you introduce you, like, I'm a geyser. I think people they gotta know. If you've been in this industry for any amount of time, you're gonna know the name Geyser. So that's awesome. Yeah, and it's cool too, seeing that you've got your finger in the pot in a couple ways. You know, I was gonna ask about what your degree was, 'cause I knew you were a marketing manager, but I didn't know, was your degree in marketing as well?
Yeah, so I got a bachelor's in communication, so it was a little bit of everything.
Yep.
Some graphic design, some marketing, all that good stuff. So
perfect. Yeah, that's good. And, we've actually had people on this show before that have had some sort of like marketing degree or business degree or communications degree, and it pays off when it comes to attracting and retaining sponsors.
Oh yeah, it's definitely. I've only been out of school for less than a year, and I've used my degree so much. Not necessarily my degree, but just like the things that I learned while I was there. And so it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's kind of weird if I look at my background. So I was my undergrad degree was engineering management, and I had a minor in marketing. And people are like, "What? I don't get it." But I've definitely used that in in this show too. I've got a little bit of knowledge around the marketing side, so I try to pull that out whenever I can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, hey, that's a really cool stuff. But I want to dig in deeper. I want to take Heat 1. I want to dive into that intro, dive in your background more. So you said that you were racing when you were younger, right? And you're obviously your family was into the business. Tell us a little bit more about some of the types of vehicles that you raced, or some of the other series that you did, because that was a number of years that you covered in like a split second there. So tell us a little bit more about maybe some highlights in your initial motorsports career.
Yeah, so I got the trophy cart. So I raced in the AMSOIL off-road series when I was 12. I raced that for, I think, 3 or 4 years, and then my cousin Sean, who I work with now, he was racing limited buggy in that same series, and he moved up a class, and so I got his old buggy, and that's where trophy cart was fun, but it was more of just, they're all the same motor, and it's all just a bunch of little kids driving around, so it was competitive, but not super competitive, and so I raced that and got into the limited buggy, and that's when it really started becoming like, I don't want to sound like dramatic or anything, but it was like my life. Like I loved it so much, and so we got into that and started getting pretty. My dad was racing a Pro 2, and so we were just at the races all the time. So I raced limited buggy for 4 years, I think. And right when I started getting really good, started winning a bunch of races. I won the Cup race one year in the Lucas Series, and then they took the class out of the series. And so, but it kind of worked out to where it was right when I was getting ready to go off to school. So took a break from that because I went to school in Idaho, and so anytime I would come back to a race, it was a whole day of traveling, and for races you have to leave on Wednesday or Thursday, and so I'd have to take 2 days off of school, and so I just kind of took a break from the racing and while I was at school, and then once I came back, I got into desert racing with the Smileys. They have a trophy truck and a 6100. Tony Smiley drives the trophy truck with my dad. And then his wife, Carrie, has the 6100, and so I race with her. So we just started that this year, so I've done 3 races so far. And it's definitely a jump going from the short course, limited buggy, to desert racing in a trophy truck spec. So it's a huge difference, but it's way fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. The whole desert racing thing, I didn't know much about it a couple years back. I mean, honestly, until I started this podcast, I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then, man, I got pulled into it, and it's so cool. The whole endurance factor is just through the roof. And it's just a fun atmosphere. So I've only really ever been to the Vegas to Reno race, which I'm going again in 2018. And it's just, it's so cool. Just such a cool environment.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's brutal, but it's fun.
When I tell people that have no idea, like never heard of desert racing, and I tell people a little bit about it, they are just like shocked and appalled. Like, why would human beings subject themselves to this type of torture? And I'm like, no, it's like they actually like it. Especially when you start talking about like Baja, like if you start getting 1,000 miles, it's just nuts.
Yeah, when you're in the truck for 10 to 12 hours and just beating yourself up, but yeah.
Oh, that's good
when
times.
you finish, it's definitely worth it though.
Yeah. So you gave us some insights in your kind of your current adventures right now, but I mean, what's something that you're super excited about? What's something that you're fired up about today?
So coming up, the next race, I'm actually leaving for Baja tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get to race that series yet, but really, I'll be racing Vegas to Reno in August, and that's my next race, and I'm super pumped about that. We were signed up to race Silver State, which was a Best in the Desert race last month, and right before I was supposed to get in, the truck broke, and so I didn't get to drive there. So by the time Vegas to Reno comes around, it'll be a long time coming that I haven't been in the truck, so I'm excited.
No, that's cool. And so I'm going to be there again this year. You're going to have to come over to the Bold Racing booth. I'm going to have a little station set up there doing interviews, so I'll have to pencil you in for an interview, follow-up interview on that day. During the
definitely.
Tech and Contingency.
Definitely, I'll be by.
Perfect.
That would be awesome.
Well, that's cool, and I'm excited for you too, getting to take your skills to the next level there. I think it's cool to see people evolve their careers over time. I'm always excited to see people switch back and forth between different disciplines, and especially, I mean, there's some folks that like they go from a dirt bike to a trophy truck to like, autocross car or a drift car or monster truck. I mean, it's pretty amazing how there's just people out there that can ride any machine or drive any machine that they want, and I don't know. I guess I'm jealous. I'm jealous from that standpoint too, but
no, it's awesome to be out there doing whatever, really. Mm-hmm. All of it's fun. It's just kind of different speeds, but it's definitely awesome.
And probably the most consistent thing is it's all expensive. Like, none of this stuff is cheap. I tell people all the time, I wish my hobby was like reading or, I don't know, like sketching. I wish that was my hobby. It'd be so much more affordable than like riding around on razors or something. It's just crazy.
No, it is insane. And honestly, people ask that all the time, like, how is that even possible? And it really comes down to, like, sponsorships are honestly one of the only ways we can get through it, unless you're a millionaire, Mm-hmm. But yeah, sponsorships are huge.
What a good lead-in! So actually, I was going to ask you next about like who are some of your current sponsors and partners, because I know that this stuff is just not possible unless you have a good sponsorship program. So who are some of the people that maybe you're working with, or maybe just that your family is working to partner with?
Yeah, so Smiley is huge in what we do. Tony owns a crane business, mm-hmm. and so he and his company sponsor a bunch of what we do. They make it possible for us to get out there. But then we also have Raceline, BFG, Mob Armor just came on, and we have a few other guys that come on just to help us out, depending on which race it is, And mm-hmm. So those are the main ones we have right now.
Very cool. One thing that blew my mind, I think it was the 2017 Vegas to Reno race. BF Goodrich was there, and I think they sponsored Bryce Menzies as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
So Yeah, I think he blew like 9 tires in that race.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, holy cow! I mean, these tires are serious. So we're talking about like this
Yeah.
is a legitimate sponsorship, and I was even talking to an NHRA racer, Megan Meyer, that was on episode 52, and she said something. She's like, yeah, NGK is their spark plug sponsor. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'm thinking like, a couple plugs here and there. I think she's running a V8, so a couple plugs here and there. No, it's like a couple plugs here and there after every single run. And we did the math on the show, and it was like $15,000 in plugs for like a season.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow.
Yeah, it's insane.
So yeah, those things are huge, and we're thankful that they can, that there are businesses out there. I mean, obviously they get value out of promotion from a promotional aspect, but I think we're just lucky that it even exists. I mean, even this podcast, right? Like I've been doing this podcast for, over a year and a half now, and I wouldn't be able to do it without the support of the businesses. I mean, it's not necessarily the most expensive thing, but like it still costs money to produce these shows, and I wouldn't be able to do it without the support. So
yeah.
Well, cool. What I want to do next, though, is take a quick minute. We're going to thank the sponsors for this podcast, and then we're going to come back and talk about Heat 2 stuff.
Perfect.
I don't know about you, but I absolutely can't stand cleaning the mud, filth, grime, goo, garbage off my machines after I go for a ride. It's just frustrating. It takes a lot of time. That's why I'm going to talk to you about Armor Coat next. Armor Coat is designed to help prevent mud, clay, ice, and other grime from sticking to your machine. It makes the cleanup quick and easy. It makes the machine actually look fantastic, and beyond that, it smells phenomenal. I don't know how to describe it, like bubble gum or something like that. It smells great. If you want to know more about Armor Coat, visit armorcoatproducts.com, and you will see their entire product line, all the offerings. Armor Coat is also working on some new stuff. They're soon going to release a solution made for coating the helmet and visor, and also one for wheels to help prevent mud buildup for high temp areas. So make your move now. Go to armorcoatproducts.com. Make a decision that's going to allow you to shorten the amount of time that you spend cleaning so that you can increase the amount of time that you spend riding and racing. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about bold racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually, rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important if you're ready for that next level of performance to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. Have you ever been out on the trail or at the track or in the middle of the desert and something breaks? Well, of course you have. We've all been there. But a lot of people at that point, they reach into their trusty toolbox for the duct tape or the zip ties or wrenches to fix their machine. However, there's a feeling that you get when you realize you need more than just duct tape to fix that rock chip in your radiator. That's a horrible, horrible feeling to have. And that's why I'm going to tell you next about SolderWeld's metal bonding products, specifically AMSOIL. So this product gives you a longer-term fix than JB Weld, which is just going to get you back to the trailer or back to the pits. With basically the assistance of MAP gas or propane torch, you can quickly and easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum. And better yet, AMSOIL Flux is the only flux in the industry that cleans and decontaminates the dirty and greasy surface for you. So you don't even have to worry about that part. The AMSOIL rods are actually capable of a 30,000 PSI fix, and they're stronger than even the parent metal. and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. So don't let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down in the trail. Bring along some AMSOIL aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from SolderWeld. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors. And on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and that also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd, and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out crashaddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are in Heat 2, and that is where we talk about some of the tactics, some of the strategies, some of the details around sponsorship. So this is the part where I hope people got their notepads out and paying attention to these things. One thing I like to do, Lindsay, is kind of talk about some examples, like pull out examples of how people have done stuff in their careers. I'm hoping that the audience can listen to these examples, take some advice from it. Maybe they can recreate some elements of what that person did in their program. So what I want to talk about next is going back to maybe some of your current sponsors. Maybe it's past sponsors that you've worked with, but I want to know how the relationship was built. So sometimes it starts with like, how'd you find them? Like, how'd you make contact? What did they see in you? And then how have you sustained that relationship? So do you have one or two examples that you could walk us through for that?
Yeah, definitely. So the Smileys are obviously the big player in what we do. And I've realized that, ours was kind of not a forced relationship, but they bought a truck from my dad. My dad built theirs. They've had 3 trucks from us. And so we met them through that. But my opportunities weren't necessarily handed to me like the relationship was. And I realized that, so like I said before, I went to school to get a degree in communication. And my dad really told me, he's like, if you go to school, you're going to have to take a break from racing. And so if you're going to school, go, he told me, go so that you can learn how to get sponsors and how to make relationships in racing. And so I was like, all right, well, let's make it happen. But one of the biggest things that I learned there was that it's just people working with people. And I think a lot of the times we get caught up in, oh, well, I have to like reach out to these big companies and I have to send them all this information, and kind of just think of it as like us wanting to get sponsors and just sending this stuff to this unknown, program where they decide if they want to sponsor you or not. But honestly, it's just people working with people. And if you show them that you're, dedicated and you love what you do, and they can relate to that. And I think that's honestly how I've gotten most of my relationships. And that kind of went off on a tangent, but like with Smiley's, they were always at the races, and I wasn't racing at the time, but I would make the effort to go out and support, and I'd be hanging out in their pit all weekend and just making it known that I really cared about the sport and I really cared about them and would love to team up. And that's eventually how I ended up getting them on as a sponsor. And, they do so much they do everything for us. It's their truck that I'm racing. But if I wouldn't have been out there, showing my support or just showing that I was interested in it and wanted to get into it and wanted to start racing again, then I don't think that partnership really would have developed. So,
One thing that I want to point out is, like you were saying, that relationship has already started, and you could leverage the existing relationship that your family had with that group. But one thing that I just want to highlight is, like, you didn't have to do that, and they didn't have to pay any attention to you. Like, I know plenty of people in either my family or friends growing up, that people like that maybe I didn't get along with people that were friends of my family, and I didn't maintain that relationship, or maybe there was. I can think I won't get into details of who it is, but there was a relationship. I had a really good opportunity back in high school to basically do like custom vehicle design, and I kind of let it slip. My dad built a relationship for me, and he like set it up perfect for me, and I just let it slip away. And so you could have done the same thing, right? You have to make decisions at some point where you have to want to continue that relationship, and they have to want to continue the relationship with you. So there's still a lot of work that goes into that.
Oh, definitely. And you have to be, like you said, you have to be willing to, and you have to want to. The opportunity is always there. It's just you taking the effort to reach out and let them know how much you want it and how much you're willing to work for it.
Well, that's good. That's good. What about maybe from like a different element? I mean, as a marketing manager for Geiser, does Geiser do any sponsorships for other racers or anything like that?
We are just getting into it, because right now we're kind of just working with clients that aren't necessarily in it to race. They kind of just want their toy.
Yeah,
but
right.
We are starting to work with it. There's definitely some things that we look out for. A big thing is, once you get a sponsor, you're kind of in that sport, at least, like you're the face for them, and it's not necessarily, it's not appearance or anything, but just the person that you are, I guess. And so we've had a lot of people, ask if we would help them out build a cage or just little sponsorship stuff. But essentially, you're not going to want, the guy who doesn't have any friends at the track and is just out there to, show off his reputation and is kind of, not a jerk, but you would rather have the guy that's friendly and that people want to talk to and people, look up to in the sport. And so it's definitely just looking into it. A lot of it has to do with your skill, and if you're going to, do well and perform well. But a lot of it has to do with just the person that you are. And like we talked about before, like if you're really into it, or if it's just kind of I race whenever I get a chance and just kind of go out for fun. But so there's definitely stuff that we look for, in providing a sponsorship.
That's why I think it's interesting in the position that you're in right now, is because, you're paying attention to the business side, You're also paying attention to the racing side, so you probably have a pretty good understanding of the things that you should be doing as a racer to provide value for your sponsors, and then vice versa, you have a pretty good understanding of what some of the other folks should be doing to provide value for their sponsors.
Yeah, no, I definitely get to see both sides of it, which is nice for me. But I've learned a ton. Even just we started up Geyser Performance in September, and so I started there when we opened up, and I've only been there for a few months, but I've learned a ton in that aspect, just kind of talking to people and making relationships, and it's huge.
What? Oh, I was just about to call out something there, and then I lost my train of thought. Dang, it was gonna be a good one. It was gonna be game changing. It was gonna you were gonna be like, wow, that was the most insightful question that I've ever been asked before.
Maybe it'll come back to you.
I'm sure it will. It'll come back at the completely wrong, most inappropriate time. But either way, so going into the relationship piece, so what are some of the things that you've done with, say, maybe it's Smiley or with BF Goodrich or somebody else? What are some of the things that you've done to keep them engaged in your relationship, or keep them satisfied with the promotional elements of your program? I mean, what's some of the things that you've done to sustain that relationship?
I think a big thing is just showing love for them, whether it's on social media or if it's talking about them at contingency or decking the car out in stickers, just making them aware that you're grateful for their partnership. And, we just got Mob Armor on board, and they send me goodies all the time, and I like to do little videos of when I get them and then putting them in the truck and just showing them that, everything that they do is appreciated, and whatever way that you can promote them is a huge thing, I think, to them. So I just like doing shout outs and just, like I said, just giving them some love every once in a while,
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to test your marketing knowledge here and see if you know what this type of marketing is called. Mm-hmm. Do you know what it's referred to? Where companies essentially hire mini marketers out in the world. Do you know what that's called?
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe once I say it, it'll ring a bell. Influencer marketing. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what's happening, and it's so interesting seeing it evolve. Social media, I think, has unlocked this element of influencer marketing where companies can dump smaller amounts of money into a wider array of influencers and get a huge benefit from it. It's just a bunch of mini commercials that people put out there that they don't have to produce. The sponsor doesn't tell you, hey, when you get these goodies, I want you to hold them in this location and use this camera angle and then film for this many seconds and say this many things. You just do it, and they benefit from that. Yeah. I think it's so interesting to watch that evolve.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. We had one that reminded me of at work. So at Geyser Performance, we do tuning, so give your cars a little extra horsepower. Mm-hmm. But we saw this guy who was out doing all this crazy jumps and was out, riding with his friends and making videos, and we're like, hey, this guy, he gets a ton of content. He has a bunch of followers that love just seeing what he does, and so we sponsored him with a tune. And after that, he went out and did the Laughlin Leap at the TV World Champs. He won that. He had never been to anything like that. Went out and won that, and just cool stuff like that. But exactly like you're talking about, to where we saw the potential. We saw that he was, he was willing to do the content, and so we hooked him up, and after that it just blew up, and we didn't even really have to do anything. We just gave him the tune, and he gave us shout outs where they were needed, and kind of just showed us some love. And so, no, influencers are definitely, it's a powerful thing nowadays.
So I want to dive into that a little bit more. How did you find him? Like, how did you find this guy?
That was just all on Facebook.
But I mean, were you like, was it a trending video and you just happened to see it and like, oh, it's kind of cool, or did you already know him? Like, how did it even come up?
So we're part of a bunch of UTV groups or like forums on Facebook.
Yep.
And so once that gets going, once there's a video that people are interested, you know, all of them repost it, and so you end up seeing it a ton. And so I'm pretty sure it was a video. He went out to Parker, I think, and did this crazy random jump in his X3, and it got posted on all the UTV group pages, and I'm pretty sure that's how we ended up finding him.
Oh, that's cool. You know, that's why I want people who listening right now to, if they want to get noticed, they have to do something that's noticeable. You know, they have to do something that's different. I wish I could tell you what that is. Like, I wish I could say, go do this, because that's going to stand out, but I don't. I don't know what it is. But there's that it works though. Like that's one of the things about social media. If you can find something or create some content that's viral, or just consistently create good content and it gets noticed, then even if you're not a racer, like this guy is not a racer, right? He's just a guy that goes out and, you know, does cool stuff. You know, he and you were able to find him and say, hey, I'm gonna, you know, sponsor you with this tune, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's really cool. So people listen to, I think that's pretty cool. Also, I think that things like that, examples like that, have leveled the playing field. You know, it used to be, you know, back before social media, you had to be, you know, placing top 3, top 10, whatever. You had to be on TV to really drive a lot of like reach, you know, with your program. And now you got people like Larry Enticer, who do you know Larry Enticer? He's in the snowmobile world more.
Yeah.
Okay. So like you got guys like this that just go out and make them crazy video, and he's more popular than half the racers out there now. And you know, I don't even know. He works with tons of companies. So like, it's leveled the playing field, and it's opened up so many more opportunities for influencer marketing, and also just for people to get cool stuff that they wouldn't normally have access to. Like they wouldn't normally either be able to afford it or whatever. But it gives them access to new things.
No, it's definitely. I am a big believer in the power of social media. Like I love social media, but even this kid, his name is Cole Friday. I don't know if you heard anything, but he, we're like, dude, like you just won the UTV World Champ, you know, Laughlin Leap, and like we want to post something on Instagram and shout it out. He's like, oh, I don't even use Instagram. Like I don't know. And so it was all just on Facebook. But like you said, it's just like it's a whole new playing field once you get into it, and I don't know. I think it's awesome. Definitely.
Well, speaking of social media, that's actually what I want to talk a little bit more about next. Especially with your background in communications, I'm sure you have, you know, some insights around how to best utilize social media. But, you know, I want to understand like maybe some of your preferences, what platforms you prefer, which ones you use, and like what's kind of your strategy around sharing information.
Yeah, definitely. I mostly just use Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of funny. Facebook is like all my parents' friends, you know, and then, but a bunch of people from like all the Mexico races. So I think because I don't know if it's just more popular down there, but a ton of people I've connected with from Baja on Facebook, and so I think that's huge on there. And then Instagram is kind of just my main deal. But I like I said before, am a huge believer in any social media. I also just started doing vlogs at the races. Okay. So I'm on YouTube. And the fun thing about that is it's kind of like a behind the scenes at the races, because a lot of people have never even been to the races or heard of the races. And so to be able to kind of watch what we do, and, I'll just like go around the pits and talk to my dad and get some footage at contingency and stuff, and just put together whatever, a 5 to 10 minute video just of like a race weekend, and then some GoPro footage. And people have loved just being able to see kind of what goes into it, because you can post about, oh, I won this race, and oh, we qualified in the top 10, but people don't really get that, And so with any social media, I like showing kind of just the real side of it. Like, I like to be real and not dress it up to where it's this perfect life and we do great in every race, and we have all these people on board, but kind of show them what we're really doing and make it fun so that they can kind of experience it with me, I guess.
Yeah, and I just want to ask a few more questions around that too. So it's video log, right? And it's shortened to vlog, right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
So we have not really talked about that on the show. We've talked about Facebook Live, we've talked about Instagram Live, we've talked about YouTube in general, but not necessarily the vlog thing. I watched a vlog for a little while that I got really excited about, and it was so strange that I even liked it. But it was this guy that went snowmobiling. I'm big into snowmobiling myself, and he would go snowmobiling and just he wired up a microphone in his helmet, and he would just record. So he'd have a GoPro or something like that on his helmet, and then he'd just be talking. And he'd be saying, hey, like, I'm riding the snowmobile, like, here's the power band, and then he'd go off and just talk about things that he's done. I was so intrigued by that, for whatever reason. So I think that is a pretty cool way to, like, tell a story. That's visual, it's audio, it's informative. It's, like you said, it can give you behind the scenes access to stuff. So I'd be curious to see what other people end up doing with that in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think one of my friends would come out to the races, and he didn't actually drive, but he'd just go out there, and he always made a vlog. And, you're always looking for people, and just seeing, like, what he does, because I would only see him for, I don't know, an hour during the whole weekend. And so it was fun to just kind of watch how his race weekend was. And I don't know, I just got into it, and I really like kind of showing that side of it. So
is that something that you include as part of, like, your sponsor package, or, are they aware of it, or is it just something that you kind of do on the side?
Yeah, and I try and kind of not shout out, but I'll show, like, we have Rigid Lights on board as one of our sponsors, and I used to work there.
Oh, okay.
And so I would go around the truck and, like, shout out to my boys at Rigid for hooking us up with these, and would show them. And so it's kind of, you can definitely work them in there. And then I post it on Instagram too, and Facebook. I'll post, like, a little teaser for it, I guess. And, tag everybody in there. So it's definitely something that's involved. And if you were doing it to get sponsors, I definitely think it's good to show, to help them better understand how they could be promoted, I guess, and just show them the opportunity, like, what they would actually be getting into,
No, I think that's pretty cool. I think the only real time that we got into YouTube deeper was on episode 82 with Sally McNulty. She's a time attack driver, so it's basically like an autocross style race. And she has her own YouTube channel that's like how to install certain parts, and, like, how it's basically tracking some of her builds, but it's very informative. And she talked about how she built that, and that's a super successful program from what I can tell. So from this vlog standpoint, I think that'd be curious if people, like, if you're listening right now and you've done something with the vlog before and you've had some success, shoot me a note. My email is podcast@impactfuel.org. I'd be curious to hear if there's other kind of success stories out there around the vlogging. One thing I actually wanted to go back to, and I don't know if you're going to have an example of this or not, but have you ever run into a spot where things didn't go as you expected with a sponsor? Like something didn't turn out right and maybe you had to change your strategy as a result. Have you run into that before?
I mean, not necessarily to where we had a problem with the sponsor. There's been times where, back when we raced short course, when the race season wasn't going as well as planned, and you kind of, you make negotiations and deals at the beginning of the season with your sponsor, and sometimes, like, we wouldn't make it out to a race because of a mechanical difficulty or these things. And so I think that's really ever been the only problem we had, but never to the point where there was like a relationship problem where the sponsorship didn't work out or anything like that.
So do you have any suggestions for people to maybe avoid a problem? Because basically I try to pull out of this with this question is I'm trying to help people understand like what they can do to prevent an issue escalating with a sponsor or prevent an issue from coming up at all.
Yeah, I definitely think that just maintaining a good relationship is important. And I know from experience that it's easy to kind of favor some sponsors. You'll get more from certain people than you will from others. And I wouldn't say easy, but you can start to pay less attention to the smaller sponsors. But that's where you can get in trouble, because really it's no matter how much they're giving you or how much they're supporting you, like, it's everybody. It's a team effort. And so you got to be grateful for everyone and everything that you're getting help with. And so I definitely think it's just important to maintain good relationships with every sponsor and not let anyone kind of slip out of the picture, I guess.
No, that's good. That's good. Is there something you've done? I mean, you already mentioned vlogging, but is there something unique that you've done to either promote your sponsors or maybe even something unique that you've seen? But I'm trying to understand, like, I'm trying to pull out examples from folks about something cool that they've done, like an event they've attended or something that's different, that's unique, that stands out. Do you have any examples like that?
I don't know that we've really done anything different. I mean, there's the basic, like, just hanging out with them at contingency or doing, decking out the car and in their logos and stuff. But we've never really done, the only thing I can think of is, like, we used to be sponsored by Canada, the food, they make dog food. And so they didn't know about it, but anytime that we would get on podium, we would bring a bag of dog food up and throw it like they would with confetti, and they loved it. They got a crack at them.
See, that's awesome.
But
yeah, that's awesome. That's the stuff that I'm talking about too. Like, for example, when I was talking, I'll go back to the Sally McNulty again. She was on episode 82. She did this thing where she got like this new turbo for her car. And she did this thing where she was pulling it out of the oven as if it was just freshly prepared, and like she had her oven mitts and everything, and I was like, that's pretty cool, that, like, I'm gonna remember that. And throwing dog food, like, there's no way if you're at a thing and you're throwing dog food all over the place that people aren't paying attention to that. Like, you got to remember that. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty cool.
No, that was funny. All the pictures and everything that they got from that race with, I think it was my dad won. And so all the pictures on the podium, there's dog food flying up. And so they definitely got, they got their promotion out of it. But it was, just a funny, friendly thing too. So.
And I like that too, because that's probably not something that they were going to think of. Like, the marketing director or marketing manager, whoever you're working with, it's probably not saying like, all right, look, I want you to go at this next race. I want to take dog food and I want you to throw it. Like, just throw it everywhere. And because that they're just not going to think of that. They're not going to think about it. They're not going to know enough details about the situation to prescribe something like that. So I think it's pretty cool that you're able to pull in something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, cool. Well, I want to talk next, actually, in the main event, and the main event is where I talk about mindset, and essentially the reason why I get into this is because I know that there's a mental aspect to this. Obviously there's a mental aspect to racing, but there's also one with sponsorship. Like putting yourself out there can be stressful, or asking for help can be a little intimidating. Coming up with cool and creative ways to promote your sponsors, that can be difficult mentally too. So I just kind of want to dive into some of those things here. But first off, I kind of want to understand for you, like from your standpoint, what's a big obstacle that you've had to overcome in your motorsports career? And I want to see, like, is there something that you took away from that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just realizing that I wasn't always going to be on top, and that I think there's a lot of expectation, not only because I'm a geyser, and so we're kind of like expected to just do well in the off-road industry, but the fact that I'm a girl too, and so there's a lot of eyes on me, I guess, and kind of expectations, and I just had to realize that I'm not necessarily out there to prove people wrong. I'm just there, I'm just trying to do my best, and I had to realize that I'm not always going to win. I'm not always going to be, qualifying well and everything, but as long as I was trying my best and going out and showing people that I was dedicated and that I wanted to be better, I think I struggled with that for a long time. I remember when I first started racing, I would get really devastated after races when I realized I didn't qualify well, or I messed up during a race and messed up the race for me. And it would really bum me out. And then I realized that once I started focusing more on me and what I was going out there for, rather than worrying about everything else and everyone else's eyes on me, I started doing way better. And I guess it was just kind of the dedication to it, and realizing that I needed to focus more on, building up my own skill rather than just trying to go out and do well, I guess.
One thing that I guess my opinion on that is that it can lead to a downward spiral. So like if you're beating yourself up after losing a race, the moment you get out of your car or whatever you're doing, people, like, the eyes are on you, and your reactions are going to probably drive the way the rest of the event goes. Like if you're being throwing a temper tantrum, you might get the camera on you for a little bit if you're in a televised race, but like otherwise the interview's not going to go very well. People are going to be hesitant to ask you questions because you're just going to get spun up about it, and you're basically not putting your sponsors in a good position either. So I think that getting control over yourself can help your sponsorship game too, because it's just you put your best foot forward and you're in more of a controlled like mindset too. So you're saying the things that you should be saying and acting the way you should be acting, and that's ultimately what your sponsors are wanting too. Like they want to sponsor you, not this other version, like the evil you that comes out when things don't go your way.
Oh, definitely. I think it's all about the attitude that you have after the race, whether you do well or you get last place. Because I even remember there was a race where my dad I think he got second place, and we were stoked about it. Like we were so happy, and third place, or he got third place, and we were excited. And second place, they gave him like this, I don't know what it's called, the big flowers, like the garland.
Oh,
that you
yeah,
wear
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called though, but
yeah, so yeah, they gave him one of those, and he threw it on the ground, and he was stomping up to the podium, like, and he got second. So I don't know if something happened to where he didn't win or what, but just the difference in seeing how my dad acted, even just getting third, and his whole family was over there excited, and he had the biggest smile on, and then to see second place, throwing a fit, and like it doesn't look good for your sponsors or anyone for that matter. Like you want to have a good attitude and just be a good sport about it, and I think that sponsors definitely look at that, and they're going to want someone who's, wants is just happy with their race and how they performed, and doesn't necessarily throw a fit in front of the crowd. If you're going to do that, do it back in the trailer,
Right,
But
right.
yeah, I definitely think that's huge.
I've been recently on this, like, I actually feel even bad about it because this just isn't how I am. But almost like a Kyle Busch. He's a NASCAR racer. I think it's Kyle.
Yeah.
I hope I don't say Kurt Busch, but I think Kyle Busch is the one that he just like he like whines and freaks out all the time. Like, and he looks, I don't know. He frustrates me so much. Like, I've never been so frustrated by someone on the way they act out in public. Either way, I'm trying to think in my mind of, like, what sponsor would want that. Like, his main sponsor is M&M's. Like, M&M's seems like a pretty happy company. Like, we're bringing happiness through chocolate. I mean, that's what M&M's should be all about. Not like this guy stomping around doing temper tantrums constantly. Even when he wins, he's upset about something. Like, the only company that I feel like should line up with that, I mean, I don't even know if this company exists, but maybe there's a company out there that's like Whiny Brats Are Us, and like their shtick is like we just whine. I mean, that company should sponsor Kyle Busch. Not M&M's. But I don't know. Maybe I don't. Nobody like. I mean, M&M's doesn't sponsor me, so he's figured something out. But either way, I just think that's kind of weird. I think people's actions should model the brands that they're trying to promote.
Well, and it's just like you said. When you think of Kyle Busch, you automatically think of M&M's, and so by him having that bad attitude, like, you kind of just relate it automatically to his sponsors, and that's obviously not what they want,
Right.
So I think that's huge.
Right. All right, so I have a question for you, and I want to see how this one goes over. So I've been asking this for a few episodes now, and it seems like this is like the hardest question ever. If you could sponsor any athlete in the world, who would you choose and why?
Ooh. Well, honestly, I don't know if you know Toby Price. Have you heard of him?
The name sounds familiar, but while you're talking, I'm going to pull out my phone and kind of look him up and make sure I actually know who this is. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so Toby Price, he races Dakar. He races dirt bikes in Australia.
Okay, yeah, I'm following him as well, so yes.
Yeah, so he, I would say maybe 2 years ago, came down to the Geiser shop, and we built a truck for him, and he's raced a few races here in the States with us, but he races Fink, and he races Dakar, and he is not only an incredible driver and completely talented, but he's the most humble guy about it, and he's super friendly and super funny. And so, a lot of guys, I feel like, just kind of get a big head when you're that good. He's really good. And so they kind of get it in their head that, we're the top guy. We deserve these sponsors, we deserve the followers, but he's completely opposite. And I feel like, if anything, like, he would be the guy that I would want to promote and sponsor, just because of his humble personality, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's good. And, the reason why I asked that question is I'm trying to get people to think like a sponsor, because sponsors are ultimately humans, that just happen to work for a company, and they have to make decisions around where they're going to spend their ad money. And they have to figure out traits of a person, that they appreciate. So that's good. I'm glad you're able to share some of those examples. I just sent him a message as well while we were talking on Instagram, saying like, "Hey, you gave him a good shout out." So hey, maybe something will come from this. But yeah, that's good. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you're able to answer it fairly quickly, because that one stumps people. I think people, when they hear that question, they're like, all right, I have so many friends in the industry, and if I say one and not the other, like, it's automatically going to put them in a bad spot.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's okay seeing squirm.
People
can squirm a little bit on this show. That's okay. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Well, another thing, whether it's sponsorship or racing, I do think it's important to be comfortable with the future and whether you know what's happening or not. So what I want to understand from you next is like, well, what's next for you? I mean, what do you feel like is your next step in your motorsports career?
Oh, I definitely want to move up to trophy truck, which is like the top dogs of what we do. So right now I'm in a trophy truck spec, which is just a smaller motor and a smaller chassis. But the goal is to move up to trophy truck and be with the big dogs, and hopefully within the next few years get up to there. Maybe I'll kick my dad out and take his place.
Right. You should. You should keep him in there and then get a truck and then beat him. I think that's your ticket.
Exactly. There you go.
That's your ticket. I love the family rivalries that are out there. Like I think I've even mentioned this on a show multiple times. Well, Sierra Romo has been on the show too, but Sierra Romo, she's racing desert now too. But her and her dad, they go at it sometimes. I think on short course. I'm not sure if they're both racing desert or not, but I always think that's kind of fun to see families go at it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Good competition.
Definitely. Well, at this point, we're gonna kind of wrap things up at the finish line. So I want to understand from you what's one thing that our listeners need to take away from this conversation. So if they forgot everything else, what's one thing they should remember from what we just talked about?
I think a big thing that even I took from this whole thing is just it's a lot about your personality and just being a good person, being dedicated, and showing your sponsors that you're in it for good and you want to promote them in the best way for everybody, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good. What's the best way, Lindsay, for people listening to connect with you?
I'd say Instagram or Facebook is a great way to get a hold of me. I'm always on there. So. And
what's your Instagram handle? What's your Instagram handle?
Lindsay Geiser.
All right, perfect.
Lindsay Geiser. So it's Linds Geiser.
Perfect. All right, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat and sharing some of your experience both as a racer and then also as kind of the sponsor, plus just bringing in some of your communications background. That was fun. But yeah, we got to kind of close things out, so I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. We actually have Brandon Tudizzle Cox coming up next. He is phenomenal. By far, one of the most engaging people to interview. Check it out. Also, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. If you have any questions or guest recommendations, go ahead and shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. Make sure that you are following us on social media as well. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And I want you to pay particular attention to Facebook because that is where we do our live experience. We actually just had Jeff Vanestal on of TopThePodium.com. He's also the global community manager for Can-Am Off-Road. So he just recorded his live episode on June 4th of 2018. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, AMSOIL, Armor Cote, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. And I also want to give another shout out to some of our other sponsors, GSP XTV Axles, MBRP, HMK USA, Stud Boy Traction, and One Stop Performance. I look forward to serving you again next week. And until then, have fun and ride safe.